This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Somalia terror attack. Security forces end siege on a hotel in Mogadishu and kill all gunmen. Rainstorms and floods force more evacuations from their homes in the southwest and north of China. And Sudan, 1 year later, the progress of the power sharing deal that ended a bitter conflict. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Also at this hour, we have our reporters on location to bring you news as it happens in South Africa. Angelo Coppola is live for us in Johannesburg. Angelo.
Well, Richard, I'm in Parkhurst, where after months of really tough lockdown measures and negotiations, it's a new day with a more relaxed anti-COVID-19 restriction in place in a couple of hours' time.
All right, thanks a lot, Angelo. And in Ghana, we have Nabil Ahmed Rofai.
Richard, I'm in Accra and all is set for the commissioning and handing over of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat right here to the African Union.
Gentlemen, thanks. We will be with you shortly. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. So good to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta. Let's begin in Somalia, where security forces have ended a near 5-hour siege by Islamic extremists at a beachside hotel in the capital, Mogadishu. Security forces say they have killed all 4 attackers and rescued dozens of people who were trapped inside the elite hotel. 11 other people were killed. The hotel is a new establishment and is popular with Mogadishu's young people. The attack started Sunday afternoon with a powerful car bomb blast, which blew off the security gates to the hotel. Gunmen then ran inside and took hostages, mostly young men and women who were dining there. The militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. The group, which has been carrying out attacks in the country, wants to topple the government.
In any case, we have to thank God. Something unusual has happened. Many have died, others wounded, and large numbers are unaccounted for.
All right, let's get more from Mohammed Kahiye, a journalist based in Mogadishu. Mohammed, thanks for joining us here on Africa Live. Let's get first things first. What's the latest on this attack, and do we know why this particular hotel was targeted?
Well, according to Somalia's police force spokesman, 16 people were killed and more than 20 were wounded in this latest attack in Somalia's capital. As you said, the attack was concluded last night. As per why this hotel was attacked, it is one of the newest hotels in the capital, Mogadishu, situated at the beachside hotel. It's frequented a favorite destination for the Somali politicians and Somali elites. In fact, 2 of the people killed in this attack were senior government officials, one in the Ministry of Defense and another one from the Ministry of Information. So this was a target for the armed group Al-Shabaab, because this was one of the new hotels that was just recently opened in the capital, Mogadishu, alongside the beach hotel along the Indian Ocean, which is a favorite place for the residents in the capital, especially the elites.
All right, Mohammed, interesting points that you make there. Thank you for that insight. Now, the capital, Mogadishu, is suffering more and more terror attacks from the Al-Shabaab. What does this all say about the war against the terror group over there?
Well, this means a lot to, as far as one of the biggest challenges facing Somali government, which is security. Despite several several gains in the battlefield against the armed group Al-Shabaab, the group is trying to rejecting the gains on the battlefield because Somali armed forces, backed by the African Union peacekeepers, have launched an offensive against armed group Al-Shabaab and also gained a lot of areas in the Lower Shabelle region, which was very strategic. So in the past months, the capital was quite free from attacks, but now the attacks are coming back. So this tells that the group is still far much from being defeated.
All right, Mohammed, with that being said, what we do know as well is that Somalia's leaders are discussing modalities for elections. Are such terror attacks likely to affect plans for elections in Somalia? Mohammed?
Well, yeah, this kind of attacks, you know, it's like telling people that right now where the Somali government is and the parliament is divided on the modalities of elections, it says a lot because the two sides of the government, especially the office of the president and the parliament, are divided on whether to hold one man, one vote elections in the country. So security is one of the major areas to be focused on such kind of an elections. So this is will be a big setback and a point of argument for those who do not maybe need or do not think that one man, one vote is possible here in the country.
All right, Mohammed, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your insight and analysis. Let's turn our attention now to South Africa, where it has relaxed its lockdown measures. The new rules and regulations came into effect today. A controversial ban on the sale of alcohol and tobacco has been lifted. Domestic travel, small family gatherings, and the reopening of businesses will also be allowed. The South African country accounts for around half of Africa's coronavirus infections. It's had more than, listen to this, 580,000 cases and nearly 12,000 deaths to date. Our correspondent, Angelo Coppola, joins us live from Johannesburg. Angelo, thanks for sticking around. Angelo, it has been a long wait and tough times for many South Africans. How has the day been so far as the easing of the restrictions begin, Angelo?
Well, Richard, it's another day here in South Africa. There's still lots of planning taking place. Many businesses are waiting for the latest regulations to actually be gazetted. They're expecting that to happen sometime during the course of today. And in fact, those restrictions relaxed completely as of midnight. We've got a couple of hours of planning and logistics to get underway. As I said, we're waiting for the government to kick in and to get the regulations out the way. If everything does go according to plan, though, the plan we have now is to see what's happening on the tourism side. We know that the tourism lobby group, Tourism Business Council of South Africa, have said that their members are ready. They're actually ready to talk to us. They're ready to open their doors. They're raring to go. We've also heard just yesterday that the central reservation system at the national parks actually crashed because there were too many people going online to try and get some bookings in, to get some accommodation at the many national parks that we have in South Africa, including the Kruger National Park. So everybody's raring to go. The problem is, though, there's not a lot of money, as there are many more unemployed people than there were at the start of the shutdown, which happened in March. Richard, back to you.
All right, Angelo, describe for us, if you will, what life will be like under level 2 lockdown restrictions. Angelo.
Well, look, the way things are panning out at the moment, what we do expect to see is we expect to see those restaurants opening up for business for normal operating hours up until 10 o'clock because the curfew, the nighttime curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. is still in place. So those restaurants are going to be able to sell alcohol freely and legally now, which there's something that we're doing, but not legally prior to the lockdown being relaxed down to level 2. We're going to see people traveling cross country borders or provincial borders. There's still no international travel allowed. That's still closed, and there's some anxiety around that. But the tourism sector is saying at least they can use this time now to get their businesses back up and running and organized. And then hopefully government will start relaxing those international travel restrictions to allow the foreign currency and the foreign business visitors to come into South Africa. So lots will change, but it's going to take time. And of course, as I said, people don't have cash at the moment, so it's unlikely that we're going to see this massive movement into restaurants and also into those tourist destinations that we have, Richard.
All right, Angela Coppola, we certainly appreciate that live update and report. That's Angela Coppola speaking to us live from Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the confirmed cases for coronavirus in the United States has surpassed 5.4 million, with the death toll over 170,000. It's the highest in the world. Health experts are concerned about a possible fall resurgence amid the start of the flu season. Our correspondent John Nta reports from New York.
The virus has significantly changed this year's Democratic convention in Wisconsin, and it comes as the U.S. passes a grim milestone. The total number of American lives lost since the start of the pandemic is now about 170,000. Nationwide, cases are trending down in many states, but California is still the hardest hit state with more than 1,200 new cases. Meanwhile, just days into the beginning of the semester, the University of North Carolina is reporting a third cluster of cases, this one tied to a fraternity. The state of Alabama says more than 7,000 children have tested positive. The Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, in Georgia, in the south of the country, says cases are rising steadily among children, and as many as 45% of them don't show any symptoms. This comes as parents and educators face a difficult decision: how to restart school.
If you are in a community with high rates of COVID-19, even with masks on, it is likely not safe to put those kids in an indoor school building with teachers and other staff members who may be high risk themselves.
But President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a senior advisor in the White House, sees things very differently.
You know, children have a 6 times higher chance to die from the flu than from the coronavirus. So based on the data I've seen, I don't believe that that's a risk. Again, this virus impacts different people in different ways. We know a lot more now than we did. And assuming our school's not opening up 5 days a week, I wish they were, but we absolutely will be sending our kids back to school, and I have no fear in doing so.
Meanwhile, experts say there's a need for more testing to be done, and there may be potentially some promising news there. The Food and Drug Administration has granted emergency use authorization for a new method that tests a person's saliva.
This test, which would require just a small bit of saliva, it doesn't need the same reagents and swabs that have been the rate-limiting step to being able to create testing at scale in this country. It really could be a game changer if we can deploy it.
Well, that would go a long way towards allowing more normal activities to resume, such as the annual September the 11th tribute here in New York. The ceremony in lights at Ground Zero was cancelled last week over health concerns among workers who'd have to set it up. But now New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo has stepped in to say the state will help with all necessary resources to make sure it can go ahead. John Nta, CGTN, New York.
In southwestern China, Sichuan province, more than 60,000 people have been evacuated due to recent heavy downpours. 31 of the rivers in the region are now above warning levels, and Sichuan authorities have raised emergency response levels. Our reporter Yang Jinghao has more.
I'm now in Jingtang County of Chengdu City. The area has been severely flooded due to the continuous heavy rains during the past few days. Actually, I'm now just beside the Tuo River, a tributary of China's longest river, the Yangtze. The water level has exceeded the warning level. During the past days, thousands of rescuers have been working around the clock in the province to transfer the residents in danger. Some nursing homes in Sichuan have also been put in danger, but all of the people living inside have been relocated to safe places. And I want to mention that the rainstorms have greatly impacted public transport. Yesterday, the Chengdu Shuangliu International Airport experienced the largest scale flight delay and cancellation of this year. For today, as of now, more than 100 flights, including the inbound and outbound ones, have been cancelled. And the railway is not exempted. Operation of many trains were also suspended yesterday due to flooding. An impact to tourism is also obvious. Some popular tourist spots, including the Emei Mountain, Leshan, Jianbuda, and Dujiangye, among other spots, have been closed to the public due to the safety concerns. Meteorological department predict that more rainstorms are expected to hit many parts of the province in the coming days. And authorities have also issued the highest level alert for geological disasters in some areas.
Floods are sweeping North China's Shanxi province, where over 28,000 people have been evacuated. Local authorities say a section of Jiangling River has exceeded the warning level, and they have activated a level 1 emergency response. More than 85,000 people could be affected. In Hangzhou City, some sections of a national highway have been cut off. The local government has released the disaster relief funds and started relief work. To Sudan now, as Sudan marks 1 year of a power-sharing deal. Our correspondent Robert Nagila looks back at key milestones leading up to this point.
We begin in April 2019 when President Omar al-Bashir steps down after nearly 30 years in power following months of protests. In August 2019, Sudan's military and civilian leaders formally sign a power-sharing deal. And later that month, Bashir goes on trial on corruption-related charges. In September 2019, a new government under Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok takes office. And in December, Bashir is sentenced to 2 years in a social reform facility over corruption-related charges. In February 2020, Khartoum agrees to compensate the families of U.S. sailors killed in an al-Qaeda attack on a U.S. destroyer in Yemen in the year 2000. And later that month, Sudan announces it will hand over Bashir to the International Criminal Court to face genocide and war crime charges. In March 2020, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok survives an assassination attempt in Khartoum. And in May, Sudan appoints its first ambassador to the United States after more than 20 years. In July 2020, former President Omar al-Bashir goes on trial over a 1989 coup that brought him to power. Back to you.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more coming your way after the break. Here's a look at what's ahead. Africa under COVID-19. We begin our special series looking at how African nations are coping with the pandemic.
Taking care of COVID-19 patients, there's always that anxiety.
Handling money is very dangerous.
Wearing of masks has become the new normal for some of them while performing.
Since the ban of alcohol in South Africa, I don't have a job.
Since I'm sitting on this particular table with great people, can each one of you give me one advice that I will mark it by heart and I will remember it for 10 years?
The road of entrepreneurship is going to be tough as you scale your business. But what you shouldn't forget is you take care of your family. Because if your family is happy, then they will support you.
As you build, you take into account the diversity of Africa and the world. This core to your business is skills.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. The unrest in Belarus is not letting up. In fact, it's growing. On Sunday, tens of thousands of protesters gathered in the capital Minsk in what was the biggest demonstration yet over what they say was last week's fraudulent re-election of longtime President Alexander Lukashenko. It comes as Lukashenko himself spoke directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin twice over the weekend, asking for help. Julia Chapman has more from Moscow.
The Kremlin says Russia has offered all necessary assistance to Belarus, including under the CSTO military alliance, a group of post-Soviet countries that have agreed to defend each other in the face of aggression. In a statement, the Kremlin also referred to external pressure on Belarus, echoing words from Alexander Lukashenko, who says the protests there are being organized from abroad. It comes as Lukashenko gave his first public address since the presidential election on August 9th. Election officials say he won more than 80% of votes, a result that opposition figures have rejected. They say that the vote was rigged. Lukashenko said that he would not hand over the country even after he was dead, and he said NATO forces were building up along the western border of Belarus, which NATO has denied. But later on Sunday, there was a much bigger gathering on the streets of Minsk as opposition supporters came out in huge numbers. They're calling for Lukashenko to step down and for that presidential vote to be rerun. After a violent crackdown on demonstrations earlier in the week, the protesters were allowed to gather without any police intervention. But Lukashenko does not appear to be bowing to their demands. He has remained defiant, and he is increasingly calling on support from Russia to help him through this difficult time. But Russian officials remain vague as to what that support could entail. Julia Chapman, CGTN, Moscow.
The coronavirus pandemic has impacted many industries in Africa, from transportation and education to the food and beverage industry. To try and stay afloat, many businesses have been adapting to new ways of working, but this has caused unprecedented disruptions to economies and labor markets. Well, today we begin our special series focusing on how the continent is coping with the pandemic.
Nothing better reflects the level of non-compliance with the COVID-19 guidelines for public transportation in Lagos than this commercial bus. By the guidelines, it shouldn't have more than one passenger on the front seat and two on the three rear seats. But all of that is put aside. It's virtually the same story for every other bus in this bus stop. It's simply business as usual. The picture hardly reflecting a city that is the epicenter of COVID-19 in Nigeria.
But at the end of the day, what we have at the back of our mind is that the money we want to make.
See, the most important thing is this nose mask. I believe this thing is not a hairball. You know, it's like saliva. But I believe that when you cover your nose properly, there is nothing like COVID-19 can catch you.
But not all are wearing a face mask, including bus conductors who shout at the top of their voice to call passengers to the bus, dispersing droplets in the process, something medical experts say is highly risky.
COVID is an airborne and droplet disease. So with that being an airborne and droplet disease, as they shout out the amount of viruses that come out, they're not going the 2 meter distance, the social distance they're supposed to keep. So the other person beside them can actually just take that one in. And before you know it, that one also comes down with the virus. So them not wearing the face mask poses a great threat to their passengers, to their family, and even to the environment at large.
But some passengers don't seem bothered by the situation.
This COVID-19, for me, I don't believe, say, what I did in there.
For me, I don't believe there is COVID-19 because I haven't seen anyone who dies from the disease.
But you're wearing a mask. If you don't believe it, why?
I only wear the mask just to respect the government order.
Government says everybody to wear, so I need to follow wear.
Well, it's pretty obvious that for these drivers and bus conductors, safety is the least of concerns, and that's the reason why all the guidelines the government has put in place to regulate the transport business is completely flouted here, and nothing happens. Nobody's here to check them. For them, it's basically about the money and nothing else. Dejabadmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The South African government has lifted a ban on the sale of alcohol and tobacco. This means South Africans can drink alcohol at restaurants and bars until 10 p.m. local time. But before this easing, many bartenders were rendered jobless after authorities ordered pubs to shut down. From Cape Town, Travis Andrews reports.
Long Street in Cape Town is arguably the heart of the city's entertainment scene, a strip that attracts locals and international tourists alike. It's since been reduced to a pale shadow of its former self. Alcohol is off limits, bars and restaurants have shut their doors, and for 27-year-old barman Lubabalo Makunyana, this means no job.
The ban of alcohol has affected me a lot because I've got a family that I need to feed. Then now, since the ban of alcohol is being introduced in South Africa, I don't have a job. I'm not working anymore, and at work we can't do anything because that's when we benefit. When the alcohol is open, that's when things are happening.
Lubabalo usually runs the bar counter at Nom Nom on Long Street, a local Italian-style eatery and bar famous for its pizzas and cold beers. These days, it can only sell food and customers are far and few between, leaving this popular barman of 7 years desperately in search of casual labor.
I do go and look for work. I do apply online. I send my CVs to various places, but they're looking for experience in their same industry. Because in my industry, it's not easy now to get a job, to get a different job. So now I'm applying to anything.
But his story is one that is replicated throughout the industry. While some wait at home, others are already beginning to move on. There are hundreds of barmen affected by the ban on alcohol sales in the street alone. And many are hoping the impending decision on the extension of the national state of disaster may bring them some reprieve. The liquor industry has been actively engaging with the government on the economic impact the ban has had.
The industry can open safely. We can sell alcohol only for 5 hours or 6 hours a day, each and every day, just to benefit, just to get customers inside the shop, just to eat and drink. Because if we don't sell alcohol, we don't make money at all. The shop can't make money, and then we can't get payment.
For now, though, the fridges are empty and the bars will remain customerless. And for many of the city's bartenders, it's a case of wait and see. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
With schools around the world shut due to COVID-19, parents have been struggling to keep their children learning. In one of Kenya's informal settlements, 2 children have found a way to keep themselves busy while spreading awareness about the pandemic. Chao Mgono has the story.
Habari? Nzuri sana. Uko poa? Niko poa. I am Milan Odora. I am cameraman from Kibera. My name is Rigan Ocheng and I am a young reporter.
These are not your ordinary journalists. Their tools are made of clay.
I once saw a guy with a camera and this got me excited. I told my friend that we could make clay-made gadgets as well.
Coronavirus is a serious issue and there's need to educate the masses. So I told my friend Regan, we go around interviewing people.
How do you protect yourself from the coronavirus?
We try fighting the coronavirus by wearing masks and washing our hands regularly.
Children like Regan and Milan are among those impacted by the pandemic.
It is very difficult to keep children safe and busy during this pandemic.
But their parents say they can still play a meaningful role in influencing behavior change.
During this pandemic, I'll support them a lot because at least I can see that, yes, they are not going to school, but at least they're doing something good for the community.
Like other informal settlements, Kibera's cramped conditions increase the chances of spreading the coronavirus.
The only fear that I have is that most of the adults are somehow arrogant, some are drunkards, so you don't know what they might end up encountering there.
So what message do Milan and Regan have for their community?
Observe social distancing, wear masks, sanitize, and wash your hands.
I am Regan Nta. I am reporting about coronavirus in Kibera.
The news continues on Africa Live. We will see you on the other side of the break with more news. Here's a look at what's ahead. The African Union to commission the Africa Continental Free Trade Area headquarters in Accra, Ghana. Companies in South Africa struggling to convince their boards and shareholders not to hold off investment plans.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back to Africa Live. All is set in Accra, Ghana for the official commissioning of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat any time from now. The ceremony was originally scheduled for the end of March, but was derailed by the coronavirus pandemic. The building will serve as the headquarters for the world's largest free trade pact, bringing together 54 of the African Union's 55 members. Eritrea is the only country on the continent yet to sign the deal, but has expressed willingness to do so after studying and understanding it. The bloc brings together over 1.3 billion people and an economy in excess of $3.4 trillion. Wamkele Mene will serve as the first Secretary General, having been appointed in February this year. The trade pact is expected to be implemented from January 1st, 2021, after a 6-month postponement, again due to disruptions caused by the coronavirus pandemic. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rofai is in Accra, Ghana, and now joins us from the Secretariat. Nabil, thanks for joining us here on Africa Live. What is the mood like, and what time should we expect the official commissioning to take place?
Richard, there's a lot of excitement here at the Africa Trade House, where the Secretariat of the Continental Free Trade Area is. You can see in the background that there's a lot of drumming going on, and you can hear in the background. We expect the program to start at exactly 11 GMT. We've seen a lot of dignitaries from the African Union arriving here. We've also seen the Foreign Affairs Minister of Ghana also arriving, and also the former President of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, has also arrived and taken his seat in the conference room where the commissioning is going to be done. We are waiting the arrival of President Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghana's president. He is actually going to do the commissioning and hand over this facility to the African Union. I should also say that there is a lot of security beefed up here. We've seen the military hovering around the premises and also the police enforcing security here. And with this whole pandemic also still in Ghana, we've seen that without a face mask, you are not allowed to enter this premises, and your temperature is also checked before you come in here, and also you have to sanitize your hand before you come into the premises. So a lot is going on here, and there's a lot of excitement as we await the arrival of Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo to commission this facility and hand it over to the African Union. Richard.
All right, I can feel that excitement. That brings me to the next question. The COVID-19 pandemic has not spared negotiations towards the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Deal Area deal. Now, how does the Secretariat propose to move these and meet the January 1st deadline?
Yes, Richard, we understand that after the commissioning and the handing over to the African Union, the officials can move in here and continue with the work that they've been doing. We know when the pandemic hit, a lot of the negotiations were going on via online platforms such as Zoom, and they would also come in here and continue with those negotiations until the official launch next year, January 2021. So work will still continue via online while this place has been handed over to the African Union, Richard.
And Nabil, finally, before I let you go, please take us through the highlights of the activities we expect today.
Yes, so while we await the arrival of the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, we know he is actually going to give an address to commission this particular facility and also hand it over to the African Union. We also expect a statement from the Minister of Trade and Industry, Alan Tremantin, that's Ghana's minister. Then we also expect a speech from His Excellency Musa Faki, chairperson of the African Union Commission, and also a speech from the Secretary General of the Secretariat, that's Wamkela Menene. And also we expect some goodwill message from the His Excellency Mahmoudou Issoufou, President of Niger and AU-AFC-FTA champion, and also a goodwill message from Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa and chairperson of the African Union. You know, not everybody can come for this particular commission, so while it's going to be done here, it also be done on a Zoom platform where those who have not been able to come to this particular place here in Accra to witness the commission can also see it going on online on Zoom platforms and also on Facebook.
All right, Nabil Ahmed Rofai speaking to us live from Accra. We appreciate that report. Thank you so much. Let's shift our attention back to South Africa as it enters the 5th month of lockdown. Companies are struggling to convince their boards and shareholders that investment plans shouldn't be put on hold. The alcohol industry is a case in point. In recent days, not one, but two multinational alcohol manufacturers have confirmed that their investment expansion plans have been shelved or canceled. Angela Coppola looks at Consol Glass.
The unintended consequences of the lockdown reaches up and down their value chain. In this case, it meant that Consol Glass has had to shelve its investment and maintenance plans valued at between $150 and $200 million. It's been devastating.
It's very difficult. We were in a growth phase. We'd seen good tailwinds for glass. There's been a swing out of plastic, and we had growth in non-alcoholic sectors. In fact, food and soft drinks, and some very positive trends. There was a shortage of glass at the end of last year, and we were hoping to repatriate some filled imports into South Africa. There are a couple of products that have brought into South Africa filled, and people are looking at local filling. So, you know, we were in a very good space, growing, about to employ people. We contracted with a number of our international suppliers, and we had to get on the phone and cancel all of these orders.
The company runs 11 furnaces, and some were due for $30 million worth of refurbishment.
We put that on hold for now. Not really a problem because clearly most of our customer base is not producing at the moment. But that's another way for us to try and close this gap that's come about in terms of our cash flows, given the fact that we've suddenly lost our customers overnight. And it's very difficult given the fact that furnaces are designed to run continuously. So yeah, they consume a lot of cash and energy, and keeping them hot while not making bottles consumes a lot of cash. So we've had to defer the cash on rebuilding facilities and keep some of these facilities down as well.
Businesses need transparency and insights into government decisions because it affects their budget planning.
Hope that we'll get clarity from government very quickly so that we can go ahead and commit to these additional, the current footprint. And this is really the problem, is the lack of certainty. You know, we have to make very big decisions. The lead time on materials are long. You're taking a lot of your capital that you want to preserve your business's cash flow, and you're putting it into act. But if you don't do it in time, then the market's going to be short of glass and we're going to import glass. And that's bad for us, and it's also bad for our supply chain.
The situation is critical for suppliers to the company, like the 4,000 recyclers that return used glass to the plant.
We've had to suspend purchases again. We did help with the grant. We put a couple of million rand into that supply chain in the last lockdown, but I mean, we're getting into trouble ourselves now. And we've taken out more than 20 million rand a month from these people, and they're informal. They don't have UIF, they don't have support structures, they don't have banks.
The unintended consequences of the extended lockdown and not consulting with business is that jobs have been lost and many businesses have closed permanently. It doesn't augur well for a recovery of an economy already under extreme pressure. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Central Bank of the Democratic Republic of Congo has raised the main interest rate to 18.5% from 7.5%. The regulator had lowered the rate from 9% in March in order to cushion the economy from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The latest rate hike was carried out to re-anchor inflation expectations. Year-on-year inflation in the country stood at over 14% at the end of July, around 10 percentage points higher than at the same point last year. The central bank had previously said it expects the economy to contract 2.4% this year, compared with growth of over 4% in 2019, partly due to coronavirus-linked disruptions to mining. Well, Tunisia's budget deficit in 2020 will be about 7% of GDP, compared with 3% expected previously due to the outbreak of COVID-19. And while the government ended all restrictions on movement in businesses and opened its sea, land and air borders in late June, the impact of the pandemic cannot be underestimated. The economy is projected to shrink 6.5%. Here's Adnan Shawashi with the rest of the details.
The budget deficit in Tunisia soared to 3.8 billion dinars, equivalent to $1.4 billion in the first half of 2020, against 2.4 billion dinars, about $903 million in 2019, as shown by results of the state budget execution. This is due to the North African state's own resources dropping 11.9% compared to 18.3% rise in the first 6 months of 2019.
The first 6 months of 2020 were extremely difficult compared to the same period in 2019. Tax revenues plunged by around 12%. The drop is seen in revenues from direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct corporate tax revenues fell 18.7% after posting a 40.3% rise last year. Indirect taxes saw considerable decrease, mainly with VAT receipts reducing by 15.5% and other indirect taxes dropping by 13%.
The governor of the Central Bank of Tunisia explained that the outstanding public debt has increased to $32 billion at the end of June 2020, up 8.3% compared to its level at the end of December 2019. The bank forecasts growth this year to shrink to 6.5%.
The most affected sectors are the tourism, transport, airline and maritime business, as well as other domains which are tied up to tourism. The agriculture, food and service sectors, especially exporting companies, are also suffering because the European Union is their first partner and the EU itself is facing an economic crisis due to the pandemic.
Tunisia's industrial minister noted that 360 small and medium-sized enterprises operating in the automotive and aeronautics sectors and which had been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic will benefit from a new support program.
Before the pandemic, some companies had confirmed orders until 2025, but the crisis hit the vital industrial and economic sectors. Several export-oriented industries lost 100% of their activity in less than 2 months. The recovery will be hard without state intervention.
The Minister of Finance announced that the bill relating to the support of economic revival, the integration of the informal sector and the fight against tax evasion was adopted by a ministerial council and submitted to the House of the People's Representatives. The objective of this bill is to support economic enterprises and help them gradually resume the pace of their activities. A recent study published by the National Institute of Statistics has revealed that up to 35% of the private sector companies, especially SMEs, could close down permanently due to the negative impact of the coronavirus crisis. Authorities say that over 100,000 people could lose their jobs if a second wave of COVID-19 hits the country in September. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Somalia, SMEs have been battered by restrictions imposed in order to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Many have been forced to close, while others are scaling down operations and laying off staff. The sector is trying to pivot to online sales in order to remain afloat. Somalia's federal government adopted short-term measures in April to try and mitigate economic damage by the pandemic. That includes a 100% tax exemption for commodities like rice and dates and a 50% tax waiver for wheat flour and cooking oil. The remittance lifeline that sustains over 40% of Somalis has also steeply contracted.
The pandemic unexpectedly affected our operations in various sectors, including finance, offices, flights, and most importantly, our annual plan on Hajj and Umrah, which picked our flight tickets.
Businesses depend on the number of customers, mainly restaurants, that provide food and drinks. Following the COVID-19 outbreak and health guidelines, the number has greatly reduced due to the fear of the people on social gatherings.
Japan, the world's third largest economy, has suffered its worst contraction on record in the second quarter as the coronavirus pandemic crushed consumption and exports. Official data show that Japan's GDP fell nearly 28% between April and June, the biggest quarterly drop since the government's comparable data became available in the 1980s. The latest drop has wiped out the benefits brought by the government's stimulus policies adopted 7 years ago. Well, time now for a short break, but when we return, in Tunisia, an entrepreneur opens hotel to provide food, medical assistance, and entertainment for pets. Welcome back. In Tunisia, an entrepreneur has opened the country's first hotel for pets. Owners who travel can leave their pets at the hotel. Food, medical assistance, as well as entertainment is provided. Adnan Shawashi has the story.
Rahma Haddad is a Tunisian civil society and animal rights activist. She has invested all her savings in this first pet house and hotel for animals in the North African country.
Booking is possible online or over the phone. This hotel is like a human space. It's made up of beauty salon and a spa. Food is available a la carte or at the restaurant. A pet shop sells all animal feeds. I've created spacious suites for small and big dogs, as well as cats and kittens. The dog can be housed indoors or outdoors. It depends on the owner's budget.
This project is extraordinary. It gathers volunteers, veterinarians, and animal lovers who care about animal welfare.
The first clients have welcomed this alternative accommodation for their pets. Some 20 animals are already on the waiting list.
I often travel abroad. I can't take my dog on all trips. This hotel facilitates my life and my dog's life. I can leave the dog here instead of leaving him alone at home.
A group of Tunisian parliamentarians led by the MP Yassine Al-Ayari are working on a bill entitled Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Act. MPs are working with activists at the Pet House Hotel to change the legislation.
We are working hand in hand along with activists to prepare a journal of animal rights. The project will criminalize any mistreatment or torture of animals.
The Pet House Hotel includes a special section which is dedicated to free animal adoption. A refuge has been created to protect hundreds of dogs and cats from the dangers of the streets. Many Tunisians have welcomed the Pet House initiative. The success of this first hotel for animals has inspired other animal lovers and associations to create similar facilities in many regions across the North African country. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, let's talk a bit of sports here on Africa Live. The spike in whereabouts rules violation cases involving elite Kenyan athletes has ignited fresh doubts on the integrity of the sport in the East African nation famed for distance running excellence. Mohamed Abubakar recaps recent instances of Kenyan runners suspended or banned for failing foul of whereabouts rules.
Despite the sustained efforts to contain the doping menace in Kenya, the country continues to hit headlines for anti-doping rules violations. For the fourth year now, the country that holds a distinguished record in distance running remains a Category A nation in the World Anti-Doping Agency watch list. However, in a departure from the past, recent high-profile cases of ADRVs concern whereabouts rules violations. And worryingly, big names of international repute have not been spared from the Athletics Integrity Unit dragnet. In January 2020, former World Junior Men's 800-meter champion and Rio 2016 Olympics finalist Alfred Kipketer was suspended for skipping dope test visits. In June, Kenya and the athletics world was stunned when London 2012 Olympics bronze medalist and former marathon record holder Wilson Kipsang was banned for 4 years. The two-time London Marathon winner was punished for providing false evidence and witness testimony after being sanctioned for 4 missed tests. Barely a month later, London 2017 World Championships gold winner in the men 1500 meters Elijah Manangoi was suspended from competition. The Beijing 2015 World Championships silver medalist was charged with whereabouts failures according to communication released by AIU on the 23rd of July. The news struck a huge blow for Manangoi, who was on the verge of a comeback after missing his title defense at the Doha 2019 Worlds due to injury. As he battles to clear his name, the dark cloud of doping shadowing Kenya's athletics simply refuses to go away. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
And let's head over to Europe, where Sevilla has reached yet another finals after a 2-1 victory